Hi everyone, this is your host Ernie signing in, and welcome to It Only Happens to Ernie podcast. Hi guys, welcome back to my podcast. I got my kitty named Kimchi here with me, so she's on my lap. And yeah, we're recording finally. I actually want to start by acknowledging last week's episode. Very much where it was very, very heavy. It was one of the hardest things I had to do. And as you could probably tell, I cried the entire time from honestly writing it, picking out which voicemail would make the cut, which I might argue that that might be the hardest part of the entire episode, to be honest, and to record it, to editing it. I just cried through the whole thing. So I know it wasn't the easiest to listen to either, but at the same time, it felt necessary. Like it felt like it was something I needed to do to follow through with what was in my heart. I knew from day one of this podcast that I wanted to honor my dad in a really, really big way. What I didn't realize before I started working on last week's episode, though, was how much it would help me grieve through the process. There's a really beautiful way of grieving out loud because honestly, for the past year, I feel like I've been grieving pretty quietly. And, it felt good to talk about that again. Just felt good to talk about him, to remember him. And it was just so nice to have people reach out to me after they listened to it and said, how it made them smile and laugh and cry. And not that I wanted to make people cry, but it was just nice to hear that people missed him. So if you listened to last week's episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning in, for giving me opportunity to talk about my dad, my hero, and for honoring my dad with me, for holding space for me, and for allowing me to be emotional. Because the truth is, this podcast is, going to be personal a lot of times. And there are going to be conversation about grief and loss and identity. And, I'm learning to be okay with showing that side of myself. I didn't want to just leave that conversation where it was with last episode, because losing my dad last year, me being 28, was one of those moments in life that changes everything. It puts you at a crossroads, whether you're ready for it or not. And the more I sat with it, the more I realize this connects directly to the whole point and the whole purpose of this podcast. If you listen to my very first episode, Call Me, Myself, and My Podcast, you might have thought, is this your introduction of yourself? And you're right. Like I didn't really fully introduce myself in that episode. And that was sort of intentional. I mean, I wanted my story to unfold over time, but I also realized like I really didn't give you enough. So, if you're new here, hi, welcome. And even if you're not, I just want to treat this episode as a little bit of a reintroduction. But more than that, this episode isn't really that personal storytelling structure sort of episode like my usual ones that I have been published in the past. This episode is just me checking in with you and honestly with myself. Lately, I have been thinking a lot about this weird phase of life, that in between stage where you've just finished something or you're waiting for something to begin or you want to start something new but you don't quite know how. And every conversation I had recently, whether it's with friends, family, or just even messages from you guys, has really echo the same feeling. And I feel like we're all trying to figure it out. And I relate to that so deeply. There's a song that I came across, and it's a song called The View Between the Villages by Noah Kahan. And the lyrics of that song and the way I interpreted it struck a chord in me because it felt exactly like this space I have been feeling for a long while now. The past, I want to say 5 years, I feel like I have been through a lot of transition. There was a period where my husband immigration process, which, by the way, that's like the whole episode on its own, and I promise that's coming. And then there was a period also when Steven and I finally closed our distance. And, I remember thinking to myself, like, yes, like finally, this is all I ever wanted. Everything is going to be so smooth sailing after this point. But the truth is that there was a long, long period of us was just like adjusting to this new stage of our marriage and building a life together finally in person instead of like being 5 hours time difference apart, and just figuring out what life looks like from day to day to us. And all of a sudden I lost my dad. Ever since then, I've just been sort of in this constant space of asking myself, what now? Like, where is my life going and what am I supposed to do next? And if I'm being honest, one of the biggest things I struggle with right now is my career. And a big part of that is because I feel like I'm slowly losing the part of the identity I used to hold on to so tightly. And I feel like I used to put so much of my happiness into that one thing, like putting all of your eggs in one basket. I felt like I put mine in one basket around my job and my career. I take a lot of pride into my accomplishment. I think a lot of that obviously come from like how I was raised. I grew up in a very much mindset of like, you go to school, you get good grades, get a stable job, you work hard, and you build a life, and that's it. But, I realized pretty early on that that path doesn't necessarily work for me. Nobody really talks about this part. Like, just because you do well in school doesn't mean you'll love your career, your job. Just because something looks good on paper doesn't mean that it feels right in real life. And in my family, there wasn't much conversation on life purpose and passion. We'd like to talk about practicality and stability and security, both in career and finances. I am not here to bash that mindset that I'm talking about the way I grew up here with my parents. I know I am privileged to have these options to choose because my parents didn't. They didn't get to have many choices. My dad was trying to get out of being poor and providing for his family, and it kept him going, this mindset. My mom was the same. Like, she had to do what she had to do, and, she had to do what she was told, and also figure out how to be a single mom in a society that was still considered single mom pretty taboo when I was growing up. And that survival mindset kept both of them going. And, they were able to be successful because of that mindset. So I do acknowledge that I'm able to think for myself, like what I want my life to look like and what I want out of it. It's purely because of my parents that I get to have this opportunity. And starting his podcast, this is completely outside of everything I was taught, to be completely honest. I love making connections and love making friends. I love having real conversations with people, whether they're my friends, family, or, stranger I just met. but I'm not someone who's naturally loves attention that much, to be honest, which is kind of really ironic because this entire thing of doing this podcast and doing this content is like 100% you have to have that attention. You have to kind of love it. And so the idea of putting myself out there like this for a long time didn't make sense to me at all. It was also why I put it off starting this for 6 years. But like at some point, I had to ask myself, what if this is the part of my purpose? Because this podcast isn't about me having everything figured out and then telling you to go out there and do what I did because it worked out for me. It actually is the opposite. This is me saying, I don't have all the answer either, but I'm willing to figure it out. And here I am figuring it out. And my hope is that it will inspire you to try. It will inspire you to start to, also figure this out with me. Because honestly, like how boring life would be if we had it all figured out from the start. And hey, I get it. It sounds so cliche, but it's really not. I mean, the whole point is the journey of this. About 4 years ago, I went through a major shift in my life. I had a health scare dealing with my ovary and my PCOS issue. And around the same time I was dealing with all this and the surgery, I lost my aunt to cancer. And it changes everything for me. Before my aunt passed away, she was talking about her life and she told me she used to live in France and England and even here in the US for a long period of time. But none of those years she spent abroad, she ever really went travel anywhere. She said she worked her whole life for our family back in Thailand. Like, she worked hard and sent all her money back, and she saved and saved to finally have money to her name and to hopefully enjoy life and travel. One day, like, she went in the hospital thinking she got like a bad cold. And, she found out at 47 she had cancer. And 6 months before she turned 50, she passed away. That shook me off my feet. I took her passing really, really hard. It changed something in me. At 24, I was dealing with the health stuff. I was dealing with grieving, and I was getting married to Steven. So life forces me to really ask myself, if my life ended tomorrow, what would I do? What would I regret? And the answer was simple. It was not taking the risk, not doing the thing that scared me. So I did. Like, I went and traveled. I chose the uncertainty. I chose the thing that people would probably call a bad career move. And I say probably, but I really mean people have said it to my face that it was a bad career move, that it was a career suicide for me. But hey, I don't regret it. Like, when I look back, I don't regret it one bit. I haven't said it out loud in this podcast, and some of you might be scratching your head like, well, Ernie, what do you do for a living? I work in the lab. When you go to a hospital or go to the doctors and they draw your blood or ask you to pee in a little cup, I'm the one behind the scene running those lab tests so your doctor and nurses can treat you. And no, I'm not just the one that draws the blood or collect your specimen, okay? I mean, it's part of my job, but it's not all of it. They tuck us lab people away, so you wouldn't hardly ever see us, but those results don't magically appear by themselves. And when I'm talking about like my traveling gig or traveling contract, it's still me working in the lab. I just get to work in the different facilities, different states, different towns, depending on like what comes up or what was available to me at the time of my opening. And honestly, the traveling, I loved it. I love meeting new people. I love the traveling part of it, going to somewhere new and exploring the new places. And here's the most important part of that gig that I was so afraid to do in the beginning. Traveling taught me something that fundamentally changed my life. It taught me to let go and to trust myself. And that lesson is the reason I am here right now recording this podcast. Because as I am working on each episode every single week, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know how people will respond to it. I don't know how many people would listen to it, if anyone would listen to it. And I don't know where this is going to take me. But here I am, showing up every week, late or not. I'm doing it anyway because I'm betting on myself. So if you're in that in-between stage right now, if you're questioning everything, if you're stuck in between that traditional route like I was and doing something that scares you, this is your sign. Do the thing. Do the thing that scares you. I'm not saying be reckless, okay? Be smart. Have a plan. But don't let fear be the reason you stay stuck. Because guess what? You might fail. But here's another thing. It might just change your life in the best way possible. You don't have to have it all figured out. And you're not behind. You're not late. You're not doing life wrong. You're just in the process of things. And that's kind of the whole point, isn't it? So whatever it is you've been holding back on, move. Try and start. And if you need a reminder, say this to yourself. I'm betting on myself. Because at the end of the day, it's going to work out. Why? Because you're going to make it work. And I think as much as I talk about betting on myself, about doing the scary thing, about figuring life out in the middle of all of this uncertainty, I want you to know I didn't learn this on my own. A lot of that come from watching people around me and, especially from watching my mom. Because if there's anyone in my life who has had to start over and over again, and again, it's her. From being a nurse, to going through a divorce, to being a single mom, to changing career, to moving countries, to rebuilding her entire identity from the ground up. My mom has lived through so many of those in-between moments that I'm just now beginning to understand for myself. And I think after losing my dad, my aunt, and my granddad for the course of this past 4 years, I've started to look at her story differently, with more curiosity, with more empathy, and honestly, with a hell lot more respect. So, in the next episode, I want to tell her story, not just as my mom, but as a woman who had to figure out who she was over and over again. Because I have a feeling a lot of us are living parts of that same story right now. If you're in that in-between space, maybe this episode is for you too. And if you could be so kind and give me stars rating for this podcast, it will help me push my content so other people can see my podcast on their feed as well. And if you haven't already yet, make sure you hit the follow button so it will notify you every time I post. I greatly appreciate it. And if nobody has said it to you today, thank you for being you. And that's a wrap on this episode of It Only Happens to Ernie podcast. This is your host, Ernie, signing out.